if it's fair for me to have to introduce this old man, a friend of mine, but Arthur Bush is a friend. He may not call us that, but we are. I've known him several years. He is from Manny, Louisiana, and he comes from good stock. He may tell you that his mother is 101 years old and still kicking high. She has done a lot of things in the community at Manny, and she still serves in a lot of different ways. You better get ready, man. You're about on. Arthur and I have a mutual friend. I had a mutual friend. Y'all ever heard of Cornbread Calvert? Doyle Calvert, nicknamed Cornbread, was a deacon in the church that I pastored in Comisville, and he and his wife Kathy, after retiring, were coming back home to visit with family. Christmas Eve, I think it was, a drunk driver hit them head on, and both of them were killed. And Arthur and I attended the funeral, almost sat together. Doyle was a good deacon as well as a good person with the Gideon ministry. You probably are not as old as I am, but I remember Gideons from the 5th grade. Did you get a Gideon Bible in the 5th grade? They don't get to do that like they used to, but they've been an instrument in a lot of different ways. You may not know that when we went to Mexico last December, the Gideons supplied Bibles and coloring books and other things that we distributed to children. Of course, we didn't pay anything for that, but they were so gracious to give us those supplies that we put in the packets that we gave to children. I don't know how many hundred coloring books and other things, but we are blessed to have Arthur to share with us today. And if you want to make a contribution to the spreading of the Word of God, this is a good place to do it. And if you happen to write a check, you can make it out to the Gideons or Gideon International, and Arthur will see that it's invested so much in the spread of God's Word. Arthur, we're glad you're here. We're here last year.
Yes, sir.
But he has a lot to share, so come and share with us, brother.
Good morning to everyone. Bring you greetings from my hometown of Manny, where I'm a member of the Bethel Baptist Church, and I'm somewhat relieved this morning. We are having our rally in the Hemphill, St. Augustine area, Sabine and St. Augustine County, and all 35 of the speakers showed up this morning, so it's my responsibility to make sure that everybody shows up to go and speak in their churches this morning. And so now I've got to do my hard part of speaking in my church service, and it is an honor to be back with you all again. I came last year, and you got to see some of the highs that I've experienced in this ministry. Now I'm going to take you down in the valley lows with me so you can see what has taken place with me in this ministry for the past 20 years. It's been a roller coaster journey, and I never intended to be a part of this ministry, but God had better ideas than I did. And so this morning you're going to see it. It's going to be a little rough on the takeoff. We're going to have a lot of turbulence, but if you stay with me, and when we get in the sky and level off, everything is going to be beautiful. And this has turned into a beautiful, and I mean a very beautiful love story. And I hope you enjoy it this morning. My testimony began in 2003 with that gentleman right there, Mr. Joe Ladner, at a Little League baseball game in St. Augustine, Texas. I taught special education at St. Augustine Intermediate School from 1995 until 2007, and that is my classroom to my right and one of the other special ed classrooms there on the left. And so I had on an LSU 2003 football national championship t-shirt and LSU shorts. Mr. Ladner saw me in it, and he came up and introduced himself to me and asked me, did I graduate from LSU? I told him, no, sir, I graduated from McNeese State. And so he then shows me his graduation ring from where he graduated from LSU in forestry in 1955. And so that was the baseball field that we were at in St. Augustine, and I coached Mr. Ladner's oldest grandson, Luke, to the opposite bottom right of me, my very first summer in 1996 there in St. Augustine. And so we were standing on those steps talking right there, talking about him being from Lumberton, Mississippi, me being from Manny. And then I watched Mr. Ladner take every step until he got to the top of that fence right there. And as he was walking, I had an intuition that came over me that said, there's something about that man. I don't know what it is, but there's something about that man. There's something he needs to tell me, or there's something he needs to show me, and I need to be around that man. And so I watched him walk away to see with his best friend, Mr. Thurman Bridges, and then Mr. Ladner owned the forestry office there in St. Augustine, and whenever I would see his truck parked there, I would stop by and visit with him. We would talk about him growing up in Mississippi, him playing high school football, and then he invited me to his house for Bible study sessions that he led on Wednesday nights, and he attempted to have me memorize these Bible verses, which I struggled to do in the beginning. But to be totally honest with you all, I had no time for God. I was making good money teaching school there in St. Augustine. And on a Saturday night, I was at a football stadium, a basketball arena at LSU, University of Texas, Texas A&M, McNeese, Stephen F. Austin, Northwestern, Grambling, Louisiana Tech. I didn't have time for the Gideons on Sunday morning. And so this went on for 3 years, and I used the term globalize. Mr. Ladner scared me to death when he told me everything they wanted me to do, and the more he talked about it, the more afraid I got. And so I started lying to Mr. Ladner, telling him I didn't want to be a part of the ministry. I started lying on my daddy. I started lying on my pastor. The lies got so good to me, I started creating my lies on a Wednesday that I was going to tell Mr. Ladner. And it was all those things that he was telling me that really kept me afraid. And so that's a stint in the military that he had. And I would see the Gideons when they would come to distribute the Bibles to the fifth graders there in St. Augustine, but I never saw any black men, so consequently I never had any interest in joining. And so as I said, this went on for 3 years, and so I finally told myself in 2006, fool, you may as well join. This man is never going to leave you alone. And so in 2006, I joined the Gideon ministry there in St. Augustine. Now I'm going to take you back to 2004 on a Wednesday morning. That gentleman right there, J.R. Hardy, I also coached him in a Little League baseball game in St. Augustine. And it was a Wednesday morning, it was storming that morning, and J.R. worked for his grandfather, Ray Hardy, one of our members, and he got electrocuted that morning. And so when I went to the office around lunchtime, there was a lot of girls out in the hallway, their mothers consoling them, and I walked in and I asked the secretary what had happened, and she said J.R. Hardy got electrocuted at his dad's sawmill that morning. And so I said, okay. Then when I got to Mr. Ladner's that night, he says, Arthur, before we go in, I need to go by and see Ray, one of our members. His grandson got electrocuted. And I said, I heard about it that morning. And so Mr. Ladner went in and he talked to Mr. Hart, and I stayed in the truck. I did not go inside with them. Then a couple of weeks later, after everything had calmed down, I went by to see the father and mother, Sheldon and Robin Hardy, to console them and talk to them. And when I walked in, Sheldon introduced me to his dad, and he said, Dad, this is Mr. Bush. He teaches school out at the intermediate school, and Mr. Hardy lit into me. You want to join the Gideons? We need some black men to join the Gideons. We need some black men to speak in the church. We need some black men to go to jail ministry. We need some black men to help us with Bible distribution. And he just went on and on and on. And the more he talked, the madder I got. And I said to myself, I wish these people would leave me alone. I don't want to be a part of this ministry. I wish Mr. Ladner would leave me alone. I don't want to join the Gideons. And so, you know the Gideons, we're the ones who distribute the Bibles, but you know us from the Bible distribution that we have in the hotels and motels. That's our second biggest need right there. And so our new tagline is, the gospel is our mission. And that's our mission to be sure we distribute these Bibles to everyone, physically putting it into their hands so everyone can be saved. And so now I'm going to share some deep, dark secrets that I kept to myself for 12 years. I never shared these with anyone. I started telling people about it in 2019. And the first one was with that gentleman right there, Mr. John Lowry from Jasper, Texas. I gave a speech to get qualified to be a Gideon speaker back in March of '07. And I simply read the speech that my buddy Elton Goodwin had given me. And I used the word organization instead of association. And Mr. Lowry was one of the 3 men that evaluated me. And when I finished, he got up and started telling me, this is an association. This is not an organization. And so he went on and on and on. And when he finished, I felt about that big. And so after that, I disliked that man very much. And so when I would go to the rallies, I would wait to see if he would come in. I'd walk over, I'd shake his hand, ask him how he was doing, and then I'd go sit in the farthest corner of the room and just stare at him for what he had done to me. The second was, every time I signed up my first 3 years to speak in the church services, I was always told that they had to get permission for me to speak in the white churches. Well, that hurt me tremendously, and I stopped attending the meetings, I stopped attending the breakfasts, and I wanted to quit so badly. But the final insult occurred with that gentleman right there, Earl Ham, one of our members. He saw me in town one day. He got out of his pickup, and he got in my face, and he said these words to me: "Why don't you just quit? You don't do nothing. You don't come to the meetings. You don't come to the breakfast to find out what we're doing. If you hate it that much, go ahead and quit." And he got back in his truck, and he drove away. But that hurt me tremendously, and I made a vow to myself that would be the very last time anybody ever told me that I need to quit and that I don't do nothing. I'm going to show him I can be a good Gideon, I can be a good speaker, and I could be somebody that they can depend upon. But I realized I was hurting Mr. Ladner, and I was not about to do that. And I also had a conversation with that gentleman right there, Brother Jackie Renfro from St. Augustine. He saw me one day, and he said these words to me. He says, "Bush, in the ministry that you're in, you are going to have to be a pioneer or a trailblazer. God is going to use you to pave the way, to open doors, to make it easier for others to join. It's not going to be easy. You're going to have to endure the pain, the heartache, the frustrations, the setbacks, and the disappointment. It's not going to be easy, but the good Lord only wants you, nobody else." Well, he didn't realize it at the time. He put the weight of all the black men joining the Gideon ministry squarely on my shoulders, and I didn't know how I was going to handle all that. And back in 2012, Mr. Jack Puckett, one of the former members here, he was assigned to speak at that church in Pineland, and he came up and told me, "I need you to go speak in my church this morning." And so I asked where was the church, and so I got there, and I did my Gideon presentation that morning. And after it was over, Pastor Michael Wright told everybody, "Be sure and thank Brother Bush for coming and tell him we enjoyed his message." And so I was talking to someone, my right shoulder pointed toward them. Over my left shoulder, an elderly lady came up behind me and said these chilling words: "The Lord told me to tell you, you keep doing what you're doing. Don't you quit. He has great things in store for you." I turned around, I said, "Man, what did you say?" She said, "The Lord told me to tell you, you keep doing what you're doing. Don't you quit. He has great things in store for you." I said, "Ma'am, I don't know you. You surely don't know me." She said again, "You keep doing what you're doing. Don't you quit." And I said, "Ma'am, what is your name? I want to remember this conversation when these things come to pass." She said, "My name is Janet Click, and don't you quit. You keep doing what you're doing. Don't you quit." And so I got into my car, and I started crying. And I cried so hard I couldn't even put the key into the ignition. And I said, "Lord, what did that lady mean with all the things that she told me? And Lord, why is it all on me? I don't have anybody to tell me what's really going on. I don't have anybody to show me what to do in this ministry. I'm having to figure all these things out by myself. And Lord, when are you going to send me some help?" Well, you'll get to see. And so I also put into that dollar store parking lot and cried for another 10 minutes after I left the church. And so back 2010, I was also able to help my hometown camp of Manny recruit some black men to join us. So those are some of those I'll go through rather quickly. And so get ready to sign up for the rally in Gilmer. And I called Mr. Horton, and he calls and tells me that Arthur, the plans have changed. We will now be riding with Brother Gary Brazier and Mr. John Lowry. And when he said Mr. Lowry's name, my heart stopped beating, and I said, not Mr. Lowry. And so that's our Gideon mobile that we ride in right there, and that's Gary Brazier. And so they pick us up that morning, and we're going to Gilmer. Mr. Hart and I are sitting in the back seat. He's hard of hearing, so he can't hear anything that's going on. And so we're laughing and talking and all of those things, and we get to Gilmer. Then we're on our way back after the rally is over. And so once again, laughing and talking, and I'm just having a blast. And then my subconscious asks me, why are you laughing at that man? You know you don't like him. And then I heard these words from Mr. Brazier that will haunt me forever. He said, the more I'm around Arthur Bush, the more I'm starting to like him. And Mr. Lowry shouted out, me too. And I said, oh, Lord, my life is over now. It'll never be the same. I wanted to open that door and just fall out of that car. And so coming up to our rally that we had in St. Augustine in April of that year, I'm sitting by somebody talking to them, and Mr. Lowry comes up and sits by me. He's 6'5", and I look up and I do a double take, and I say, oh, Lord, why don't this man leave me alone? And so he sits by me, and then after everything is over, he slides a piece of paper and an ink pen to me and tell me, write your name and number on this piece of paper. I need to keep up with you. And I said to myself, no, you don't. I don't want you keeping up with me. And so we go to the rally in Woodville in May of that year. And then it's held at Elijah's Restaurant. And so my buddy Elton and I are sitting in there. Go back. We're sitting in there, and Mr. Brazier and Mr. Lowry walk in, and they surveyed the room to see who's in there. Mr. Brazier asks, who's sitting with you all? And Elton says, nobody. So Mr. Brazier sits with Elton, and you know who sits with me. And so a couple of minutes later, we're sitting there, and Elton asks, who's giving the charge? And that's the motivational message to all the Gideons before we go out and speak in all the churches. And Mr. Brazier says, Bush is. And I said, no, I'm not. Mr. Lowry says, you need to learn how to do that. I said, Mr. Lowry, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. It'll probably be around 2017 before somebody teaches me what to do. He says again, you need to learn how to do all those things. I said, Mr. Lowry, I'm not ready. And so coming July, they have their rally in August. I get a phone call on a Monday morning at 6 o'clock, and it's Mr. Lowry. He says, are you up? And I put my phone back. I said, no, I'm not up. He said, well, I'm up. You ought to be up. And I said, okay. He says, Brazier and I have been talking, and we want you to give the charge at our rally. I said, Mr. Lowry, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't want to embarrass you. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass the Gideons. He said, you need to learn how to do it. I said, Mr. Lowry, it'll be around 2017 before somebody teaches me how to do all those things. Well, I get the lecture of my life. In every sentence, Mr. Lowry repeated these words, it's time for you. It's time for you to get out that back seat. It's time for you to start sitting up front. It's time for you to speak in larger churches. It's time for you to go places by yourself. There's a big old world out there. You need to be exposed to it, and you need to experience it, and we're going to help you. Now, you're going to give the charge at our rally. Then we're going to send you to the largest white church we have in Jasper, Hillcrest Baptist Church. When you get up to speak, you're going to be on the radio, and it will be broadcast all over Southeast Texas. We expect a good offering, and you better get us one. I say to myself, I'm glad you're not asking for much. And then he leaves me with these words that I'll never forget. He says, you can do a whole lot more than what you're doing, and it's time to start. And I'm thinking, what did I do to deserve that? And so all those things Mr. Lowry told me started taking place. I became an area director in 2014. I was the only black male that serves as an area director here in the state of Texas. We have 25 areas, and so I served in that position for 7 years, never having another black male serving the ministry with me. And so my first 7 years in the ministry, I never laid eyes on another black male all over the East Texas area. And so the gentleman to my left was the Virgil Tornado from Atlanta, and Dr. David Bates to my right. Go back. Mr. Tornado kept telling me, go back. Oh, you going for it? Go back. Mr. Tornado kept telling me, Arthur, we have a black guy named Ambrose James. I keep telling Ambrose, you need to come and meet Arthur Bush. Ambrose, you need to come and hear Arthur Bush speaks. Ambrose, you need to come and be with Arthur Bush at the rallies. And so my 7th year, I finally had an opportunity to lay eyes on Ambrose James, and I was so happy that I was no longer the only black male at the rallies, because I would be there in the mornings. We'd be there at the breakfasts, upwards of 80 to 100 men, and I'm the only black guy in the room. And then 2 years after that, Dr. Bass kept telling me, Arthur, we have a black guy named George Johnson. He's the president of our camp. I keep telling George, you need to come and meet Arthur Bush. George, you need to come and hear Arthur Bush speak. And so my 9th year, I met George Johnson. That's him to my left right there, and one of our youngest member, Gold from Tyler. And so I've just given you the background that has got me to this particular point in my life. And now I'm going to transition into my daddy's life and how my life has taken an unbelievable turn that only God could initiate something so amazing. My father, Arthur James Bush, was 99 years old, 51 days away from 100. He was a World War II veteran. He fought on the front line as a gunner. And this is his last public appearance that he made in February of 2018. They had a changing of the guard ceremony at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and my dad was able to go, and that's some of the family members and cousins in attendance for that ceremony where they honored all the former World War II veterans. And so that's my daddy being interviewed by one of the local TV stations afterwards, telling them how he fought and shot that machine gun against the enemy. And so my dad died on June 10th, 2018. We know he had a series of falls. He fell, hit his head about 3 times, developed bleeding on the brain, and on a Sunday afternoon in Bossier City, Louisiana, my daddy died from complications of pneumonia. At that time, in 2018, my 93-year-old mother, Evelyn, she has now turned 101, like Brother Bo mentioned to you. And last year, we had a huge Mardi Gras-style celebration for her, celebrate her 100th birthday. And she was a former home economics teacher. She taught in Sabine Parish. And all of the former students came. Well over 350 people attended from all over the United States to come and help my mom celebrate her birthday. And so this year, we just had a smaller birthday party at the church and everything. I told the pastor, we can't do these large-scale things because it's wearing me out. And so we just did it there locally at the church. And so on a Friday night, July 6th, a month after my dad died, my mom calls me when I get in from St. Augustine, and she says, I want you to come over. I have something to give to you that I know you would want to have. And so when I walked into my dad's bedroom, there were 3 Bibles lying on the bed, 1 big Bible heavily taped with my dad's name on it, and 2 little small testaments. I picked up the big Bible, and when I opened it up, I saw these words, "This Bible was placed by the Gideons." I started trembling and shaking like, Lord, what's going on here? And then I look on the opposite page, and I saw where my daddy had received that Bible on May 30th, 1944 in the Netherlands Indies and South Pacific. Now I'm trembling and shaking even more. And then my mom says, you see that hole right there? I said, yes. She said, your daddy got shot during the war. He had this Bible in his pocket, and it saved his life. And I said, Lord, what are you and my daddy doing to me right now? I'm not understanding what's going on here. And so that's the remainder of that Bible. And then I pick up the 3rd Bible, and I opened it, and I saw these words, the White House, Washington, D.C., and a note from President Franklin Roosevelt recommending that the men read their Bibles during the war. So I'm holding a piece of American history, and I come to find out that there were only 56,000 of these Bibles printed, and I'm holding one. And on the back of that Bible, my daddy wrote this note, this Bible went to war with me, November 1942. And so I have the original Bibles here with me today for you all to look at, along with my dad's commendations that he received in the military. That includes the authentic autograph of President Harry Truman's. And so for the next 3 weeks, I'm losing my mind. I can't sleep. I can't think. I go by my daddy's grave. I go to my daddy's grave. Daddy, why didn't you tell me you had these Bibles? Daddy, why didn't you say something? Daddy, why didn't you share some stories with me? And so finally, 3 weeks later, the Lord told me it was not meant for your daddy to tell you he had these Bibles. It was meant for me to show you, and that way it will accomplish the things that I wanted to. And I said, okay, Lord, I can go along with that. All right, I need you to go back. I need you to remember that date, July 31st. You're going to see that again, July 31st, 1918. And so 174 Bibles were given in honor of the Gideon Card program about my daddy from Gideons throughout the state of Texas, as well as Gideons in Louisiana in honor of my daddy. And Isaiah 55:11 is our theme verse that says, wherever the Lord sends this Bible, it will not return void, and it's going to accomplish the things that he wants it to in his timing. And I started telling our state leaders that I had the Bibles, and they said, okay, Arthur, we'll do a story about you and your dad, and we'll put it in your Texas newsletter. And so in August of 2018, a 2-page story came out about my daddy and the Bibles. And they also told me, if you're going to the International Convention in New Orleans, be sure and bring the Bibles, and we will find someone to take pictures. And so I left on a Friday. That Thursday, I get a phone call from my buddy Earl Ham, and he says, are you going to the convention? I said, yes. He said, are you at home? I said, yes, I'm at home. He says, I'm coming by to see you. And so he came by, and he gave me this $100 bill, and he said, this is for your expenses and your gas to get to New Orleans. And I said, may I ask why you're giving me this money? Because I knew him well enough then. He said, for all the hard work that you do for the Gideon Ministry, and because I love you. And I said, I love you too, and thank you so very much. And so the convention is held at the Convention Center in New Orleans. It's 10 blocks long. And so my buddy Cornbread and I are walking in, and I'm looking down the left hallway, and that young lady right there, Abigail Bass, says, excuse me, may I take a picture of the two of you? And Cornbread says, sure, you can take our picture. And then he asked her, are you with the crew from New Orleans that's covering the convention? She says, no, I'm with International. I'm the official photographer. And I says, okay, you're the one I want to talk to. And I tell her about my dad's Bibles, that I have them up in the hotel room. And after everything is over, I'll run up and I'll get the Bibles. And she says, okay. And I said, let's exchange business cards before we leave each other. And so we did. And so 30 minutes into the banquet, she sends me a text message. I step outside and I call her, and she says, we're going to interview you tonight and take pictures of your dad's Bibles. I said, okay, I'll answer a few questions you have. I just want you to take pictures. She says, no, we're going to interview you. I said, look, I just want you to take pictures. She said, you're really not understanding. We're going to interview you on camera. I says, oh, no, we're not doing that. She says, yes, we're going to interview you on camera. The camera crew is already here. The camera's already set up in the ballroom. I said, look, I just want you to take pictures. She says, no, we're going to let you tell your story, let you tell your dad's story. I said, look, I just want you to take pictures. She says, no, we're going to interview you. And you know, all of this is going to go out worldwide. And I said, oh, no, baby, we're surely not doing that. And so we go in and we do the interview, and I'm sitting there holding my dad's Bibles, and they're taking pictures. And I said, Lord, I just wanted her to take pictures. And he's telling me, Isaiah 55:8, your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. I want the world to know about Arthur Bush the father and Arthur Bush the son. And so in our 2019 issue, December, January, of our international magazine, a 4-page story came out about my daddy, Mr. Ladner, Mr. Lowry, and myself, sent out at that time to over 330,000 men and women in over 200 countries, reading about a coward from Manny, Louisiana, that didn't want to join the Gideon Ministry for one reason and one reason only, and that's what I'm doing right now, standing in a white pulpit. I told myself I would never do this. And so for the past 18 years, I have stood in more white pulpits than I have passed by black churches. And I've had an opportunity now to share my testimony in 7 different states. And I can't imagine that this is what I do on a Sunday morning. But I'm so thankful. Mr. Ladner never gave up on me. Mr. Lowry never gave up on me. They saw something in me that I never wanted to come out. And I'm so thankful they did that to me. Very quickly, all the things Mr. Lowry told me about going places by myself. I went to Baltimore, Maryland in 2018, and I'll run through these quickly. Now I do training on how to talk to pastors to secure church services and how to recruit men to join this ministry. And then I spoke at Baltimore, Maryland, Gideon's right there. Then I went to Jackson, Mississippi in 2019 and spoke to 60 men from the state of Mississippi on how to teach men to become members and also train to talk to pastors. And then that gentleman right there to my left, Roy Ashton, during the training there in Mississippi, every time I'd say something, we'd take a break, I'd be turning my back, drinking water. He'd come up to me, Arthur, I like that idea you had. Arthur, that was a good thing you told us. Arthur, all of this. And I said, there was a guy named Roy that kept talking to me. I need to get his name and phone number so I can just call him and thank him for making me feel welcome. And so I got the number and I called him. He says, I'm glad you called me. I want you to come and speak at our banquet in October. So in October of 2019, I went to South Haven, Mississippi. I asked, where's South Haven? He says, it's at the top of Mississippi. And so it's about 15 miles from Memphis. And so I went and spoke at their banquet there. Then that Thursday night, the gentleman right there with Roy, Terry Champion, he told Terry that he was having a banquet, and Roy says, I'm coming to it. And Terry says, okay, would you have Arthur to come and speak? And so I spoke at their banquet that Thursday night. And then that's all the members there from the Water Valley camp. That's members from the South Haven camp. Then that Sunday before I left, I spoke in a black church in South Haven. Then I went to the International Convention in Atlanta, Georgia in 2019. Ended up meeting that young man right there, Wayne Gabriel from Tampa, Florida. And my buddy from Marshall that I went with, Sam Hamilton, told him, say, you need to talk to my buddy there. He can help you talk to pastors and secure church services and get me in to join this ministry. And so Wayne asked me, you want to come to Tampa? And I said, yeah, I'll come to Tampa. And so I ended up going to Tampa Valentine's weekend, and I did some training there. And then I had a camp meeting there, and I did the training with those guys. Then I spoke at a church there in Zephyr Hills, Florida, and they gave me a nice welcome, put me on the marquee. And so there's pictures of the church right there. And then I went to Laurel, Mississippi, and I spoke at a pastor's banquet there in Laurel, Mississippi in 2021. Then I went to Oklahoma City, Father's Day weekend, 2021, and did some training up there, 150 men and women from the state of Oklahoma at a president's conference. And then I went to the Arkansas State Convention, and I spoke at their state convention, teaching them about mentoring and getting men to join. And so that's me right there. Then a week later, I went to Osceola, Missouri, and I spoke at a pastor's banquet right there in Osceola, Missouri. And then I also spoke in 2 church services before I left. And so I tell people now, whenever we do things, don't talk about us, talk about kids, and how the kids impact our ministry when we distribute that Bible to them. And so I spoke in a church in Paris, Texas, back in 2021, and that's my host, Ronnie Groom, go back. My host, Ronnie Groom, standing right there. And on 2 separate occasions, 2 little kids, a little boy and a little girl, had to be between the ages of 8 and 10. The little girl came up to me first, had a friend with her, and she says to me, show my friend the bullet hole where your daddy got shot. And I said, wait a minute, this little girl listening to me? And so I showed him the bullet hole, and then the girl left. Then a little boy came. Little boy had a friend with him. He said the same thing. Show my friend the bullet hole where your daddy got shot. And I'm like, wait a minute, I need to see where this is going. And as you can tell, normally I take out my phone and I take pictures. And so the little boy left, then the little girl came back. She had another friend with her, said the same thing. Show my friend the bullet hole where your daddy got shot. Then the little girl left, and then the little boy came back again. This time he had his daddy. And he said to me, show my daddy the bullet hole where your daddy got shot. And I started crying on the inside. The little boy started asking me questions. Do you know what type of gun your daddy was shooting? You know what type of bullets they were? You know what type of cartridges? And just different questions. I had put my hand up to stop him. I said, young man, I'm sorry. I won't get those answers until I get to heaven to see my dad, because he never told me any stories about the war, and I apologize for that. And so I know that you're wondering about Mr. Lowry and I. We now have a beautiful friendship. I love that man dearly. I call him every 2 weeks to see how he's doing. I have to hear his voice. And so when we got out of school for Easter, I went by and visited with him, because he told me by the end of the month, he'd be moving to Austin to an assisted living facility, he and his wife. And so 2 weeks ago, I was in Tyler, getting ready for my church service. And he gives me a call. He said, Bush, this is the last Sunday. I'm here on Lowry Hill. And every time I talk to him, he'd always ask me, where do we go next? And I always tell him where we're going. And he always say, I wish I could be with you all. And I wish he could be here too. Back around 2015, I had on a pair of burgundy eel boots, and he saw me in them. And he asked me, where'd you get those boots? And I said, I got them in Bossier City, Louisiana. He said, I want you to go with me. I want to get a pair of boots like that. And so those are the pair of boots that he bought. And something happened to his foot or his feet, and he could no longer wear those boots. And so he gave those boots to me. And it's as if he's passing the torch to me. As if to say, Bush, I want you to walk in my shoes. I want you to feel my shoes. You see, I wouldn't be here without that man. I wouldn't be standing in front of you all. I still been on that back seat. It's because of him. Then sometime around 2012, he was speaking at the banquet in Nacogdoches, and I made a stupid mistake. I called and asked him if I could ride with him. And he said, yeah, you can ride with him. And so we were going to Nacogdoches. And right before you get into Chirino, where that story is on the right, and there's a little pond right there next to it, he looked at me because at that time, I was trying to get into the oil field in public relations to do something that I was fed up with education and just tired of being in Manny. I wanted to get out so badly, and my life was just in chaos. And he looked at me and he said, you know why you're having so much hell in your life? And I looked at him and he said, don't look at me like that. He said, you know why you're having so much hell in your life? And I said, no, sir. He said, the Lord is trying to use you. He wants to use you, but you won't let him. You're too busy running and trying to hide. Son, your life would be a whole lot better if you would just surrender to the Lord and let him use you. And I said to myself, if this man's telling me that, I probably need to listen. And so after that, I turned my life around and I completely gave it to Christ. And I'm so thankful I had a friend that was bold enough to tell me what I needed to do to save my life. And I have the original boots here for you to look at as well. You see, had I not signed that application 23 years ago, those Bibles would have still been sitting in my dad's bedroom closet, where they sat for 50 years. I looked in there hundreds of times, and I never saw those Bibles. And occasionally I beat myself up wondering why I never saw those Bibles, but it's all in God's timing. And 23 years ago, I asked Mr. Ladner, why are you teaching me to memorize these Bible verses and having these Bible study sessions with me? And I memorized these Bible verses, and I turned my life over to Christ. And he says, Arthur, because you're a faithful man, and he taught me the Bible verse, 2 Timothy 2:2. These things you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit them to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And so, Pastor, that's what happens when that prospect signs that application. We take a faithful man from the church and we teach him how to become a much better man. And that's what has happened with me in the Gideon ministry. And Mr. Ladner passed away in 2016. And about 3 weeks ago, I went to New Boston. And then Mr. Ladner made his last trip to New Boston back in 2015. And he and I were sitting in the back of the van. And the onset of throat cancer had started to take over his body. And he was just laying there asleep. And I looked at him. And I'm thinking the whole way back home, this is probably the last time that I get to go to the rallies with Mr. Ladner. I got to spend 13 beautiful years with him. He taught me so much. And I'm so thankful. Whenever I would visit him the last 6 months of his life, he would always ask me, Arthur, aren't you glad you joined the Gideon ministry? And all I could ever say to him was, Mr. Ladner, if you only knew. I could never tell him how much I enjoyed being in the Gideon ministry. And every time I stand in the pulpit on a Sunday morning, I think about him. And so that's Brother Chuck Swindell. Go back. My buddy Elton spoke at a black church in Henderson back around 2014, 2015. And after it was over, Brother Swindell stood up and just yelled out, I thought this was a cult. I said, sir, you and I need to talk. And so we talked for 3 months, and I convinced him to sign that application. And that's him getting his Gideon pen right there. And then the night of my 56th birthday, that gentleman right there, Lenny Haskins from Geneva, he signed his application to be a Gideon. I was so happy I was no longer the only black guy in the camp by myself. And then I spoke at a church in Henderson in 2017, and the pastor had denied us entry for 4 years, and so finally I had an opportunity to go and speak. And then after it was over, that young man right there, Henry Pace, came up and asked me, what do I need to do to be a member? And I told him to talk to that guy, Cliff Hickman, that was with me that morning. And so another incident occurred in Dangerfield, Texas, around about 2019. After I spoke, that young man right there, Gavin Bigelow, and his mom came up to me, and she said, Mr. Bush, I want to tell you, this is my son, Gavin Bigelow. And while you were speaking, Gavin told me, Mom, I'm getting chills. She said, what? He said, I'm getting chills. Mr. Bush talking about his daddy, that bullet hole in him being shot, I'm getting chills. And I said, ma'am, you're giving me chills. And he also said, she said that Gavin told her, Mom, the money that you're going to give me for my allowance, I'm not going to spend it. I'm going to give it to Mr. Bush so he can buy a box of Bibles for those kids overseas. And I said, young man, do not leave. You have just become a part of my testimony. And so I was so thankful that he did that. Like I said, don't talk about us, talk about the impact that it makes with those kids when they get that Bible. And then I've already talked about that one right there. And so I had an opportunity, go back, to speak at the Missouri State Convention back in 2023, and that's been the highlight of me being in the Gideon ministry. I could never imagine me speaking at a state banquet in front of other Gideon members in another state. So those are pictures from that. And that's the scene from it. Those are 5 guys from around the United States that I now serve as a mentor to. Starting on the left corner, Rain Gabriel from Tampa, Florida, Dale Taylor, Jonesboro, Arkansas, Robert Jarrett in the middle, Tulsa, Oklahoma, James Cornigan, Bayshore, New York. I convinced him to come to St. Augustine last year during this time to our rally, and he came from New York, and my buddy Spencer Carter right there from Baltimore, Maryland. And so, go back. Mr. and Mrs. Ladner celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary back in 2003. And so Mr. Ladner gave me a personal invitation, and I had him to sign it. And so I told you, remember the date, July 31st? Mr. and Mrs. Ladner were married on July 31st, the same date as my daddy's birthday. And they celebrated their wedding anniversary, 50th wedding anniversary, on my daddy's 85th birthday. I don't know what you call it, I call it God. Only God could do something like that. And so those are pictures from the wedding anniversary. And also, I finally had an opportunity to get my mom and Mrs. Ladner together, and they met at 2023 in Brother Tim Swanson's church. And Mrs. Ladner told my mom that she and Mr. Ladner were married for 63 years. You all could have guessed how long my mom and dad were married? 63 years. I don't know what you call it. I call it God. And so there's some pictures. That's a picture of them together. And just different scenes of Mr. Ladner. He was a great dancer. And I told you, remember that date, May 12, 2004, J.R. Hardy's death. Because at times I beat myself wondering why Mr. Ladner and my daddy were never around to see all this take place. And one day the Lord told me, go to your Bible verses. And so on that day that J.R. Hardy got electrocuted, you can barely see a scribble down at the bottom, I came across that Bible verse, Hebrews 9:16, whatever it is, that basically said that the testator, that none of this can happen as long as that person is alive. That person has to be dead in order for it to have the full effect. And that's what's taking place with this ministry. See, they couldn't be alive to see all this take place. They had to be dead. And so I've learned to now that someone has to die in order for people to have a powerful testimony. I call that picture right there the passport to heaven. See, church, with your donations that you give to our Gideon ministry, we were able to go into that little girl's school and physically place this Bible in her hand, and you gave her an all-access pass to walk around heaven for the rest of her life. And it's all because of churches like you all in the United States that allow us to stand in the pulpit and share messages like this one. And that's one from a young man that sent in and told the Gideon that the first thing he's going to do when he get to heaven is hug God. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine hugging God? And then after that, he's going to go and hug a Gideon. I can't wait to do the same and see Mr. Ladner again and my daddy and just thank him. Back during the New Year's holiday, I was decluttering some things in my mom's bedroom, and I came across a manila folder on the floor. And when I opened it up, I was sent into shock. It was my daddy's military information. I never knew that he was part of an all-black unit in the military, and that's pictures of it. And that's a picture of him to my left down at the bottom. And also information about it, about him. And I found out and discovered that he received 3 bronze medals during the war. And it just shocked me. Like, Daddy, why didn't you tell me you had this information? Daddy, why didn't you share this with me to let me know these things? And so that's some of his specifics right there. And also tells about him shooting the machine gun. And he shot it with deadly accuracy. And that's a picture of the Gold Star medal right there. And it tells about his meritorious service serving in the military. It's one of the 3 highest medals that you can get in the military. And then it hit me. My daddy killed people. My daddy killed hundreds of people. My daddy probably killed thousands of people. But that one bullet that was sent to kill him was saved by a Bible that saved my life. It saved my life. The last incident that took place, I spoke at the Louisiana State Convention. And go back, please. And they called and asked me to come and speak, and I said, okay, I'll come under one condition. I get an opportunity to meet the ex-sheriff, William Earl Hilton. I want to speak in his church. I want to meet him. And they said, okay, he goes to Homewood Baptist Church. We can make that happen. And so I had an opportunity to meet him, and so I'm sitting there waiting, and he had heard about it through the pastor that I wanted to meet him. And I was sitting on the front row going over my notes and everything, and he walked up to me and said, I heard you've been looking for me. I said, yes, sir, I have. And so we shook hands and hugged, and we talked for the next 30 minutes. And then I gave up my testimony. And after I finished, that young girl right there, Gabriella Austin, was standing right behind me, and she had a note for me. And she gave me the note, and I read it, and then I looked at her like, what are you doing? And then I read the note again, and the note says, God has a reason for you. And I'm thinking, oh my God, don't you quit. And Brother Renfro, the good Lord only wants you. Nobody else. So it all just hit me all at once. God has a reason for you. And I'm thinking about all those times I wanted to quit. But I'm glad that I didn't. And there's the note right there. See, when God wants to make you a king, he doesn't give you a crown. He gives you struggles, defeats. He gives you that mountain to climb. He puts you in that valley so you depend on him. And last year, one of my pastor friends' wife died, and I went to the service. Then a couple of weeks after that, I went back to check on him. And that morning, he talked about being lonely and grieving for his wife. And the topic of his message was how God puts you in a situation where you only depend on him And it was about loneliness and how it can be a blessing. And then it made me think about those 12 years. Those 7 years I was by myself. I could only depend on God. You see, I didn't know Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. I was trying to figure all that out myself. I didn't trust in him to let him lead me. And now I know I have to allow him to lead me and direct my path wherever I'm going. And see, none of this is about me. Everything I've talked about is not about me. It's about my daddy and Mr. Ladner. I never fought in a war. I never held Bible study sessions to lead people to the Lord. I'm just blessed to get up on Sunday morning and share what the Lord has done in this ministry with me because of those men. I didn't have a Gideon Bible, but my daddy did. I didn't want to join, but Mr. Ladner made me. And when I was growing up, and I'm closing, my daddy would buy us RC Colas, moon pies, and stage planks to eat. After the Bible study session with Mr. Ladner, I'd have us RC Colas. He called it Ara C Cola. Moon pies and stage planks. I'd give anything in this world. I'm sorry. I'd give anything in this world if I could have another RC Cola, moon pie, and a stage plank with my daddy and Mr. Ladner. Thank you all for allowing me to share my testimony, and I hope that you've enjoyed it.
Arthur, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us this morning, and that was God. It kind of got our attention, but I appreciate so much just your honesty and your willingness to share, and you know, not only just have the opportunity today to give to the Gideon Ministry, some of you, God may want you to give a little more down the road, be involved in that ministry, and so. I would just ask if you're interested in that, you need to catch Arthur afterwards and say, let me know more about what it is to serve with the Gideons. So before we're dismissed this morning, we're going to sing. We're not going to have a normal altar call, but we're going to sing, and Miss Dana, lead us here.
Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. The Lord has promised good to.
Thank you for worshiping with us online today. We're grateful that we can still come together in spirit and celebrate our faith as a community. Your presence here means the world to us, and we're thankful for the love and support that you bring. Hope that you've been blessed and encouraged by the music, teaching, and fellowship today. We're grateful for the technology that allows us to reach and connect with people all around the world. As we close this online service, we want to take a moment to express our gratitude for the gift of worship. It's a privilege to be able to gather together, to sing, to pray, and to hear the Word of God.